Okay, so you're probably listening to this because I guess going off the grid has, crossed your mind at least once.
At least once, yeah.
Right, like the idea of being self-sufficient and maybe ditching those monthly utility bills.
Absolutely.
Whatever's drawing you in, energy independence is a big part of that. And today we're diving straight into a crucial point, the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to power their life off-grid.
Exactly. You might think of those shiny solar panels or a generator humming away.
Right.
And while those are definitely part of it, we're focusing today on a basic misunderstanding, a sort of misstep that can really mess up your off-grid plans, leaving you, well, not exactly free, but frustrated and without power.
Okay, so let's get right to it. What's that big mistake? What trips up so many people when they're trying to be energy independent?
The main problem, the mistake that, kind of overshadows everything else, is underestimating how complex real energy independence is. And as a result, they depend too much on a single power source. It's the trap of thinking that one thing, whether it's a ton of solar panels or a giant tank of fuel, will solve everything.
The one-size-fits-all myth of off-grid power.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So let's talk about the obvious choice for many solar panels. What's the reality of relying only on solar?
Solar power, it definitely captures the imagination, right? And it's a fantastic renewable source. But the important thing is it's, inherently dependent. You see these bright sunny days, seems perfect for making electricity.
Sure.
But that picture of endless free energy, it runs into the, unpredictable reality of weather. What about when it's cloudy for days?
Yeah.
Or think about winter, shorter days, way less production.
Yeah.
And then there's severe weather, storms that can wreck your system or just shut it down for a while, leaving you vulnerable.
Right. Sunshine isn't exactly a daily guarantee. So naturally, the next step for solar is batteries, storing that energy for when the sun's gone. But it's not just hooking up some car batteries, is it?
Definitely not. Relying only on batteries means a big ongoing cost and lots of maintenance. So real independence, well, it's debatable. The first hit for a decent battery bank can be like $15,000 to $30,000.
Wow.
And that's just the beginning. They have limited storage, and they get worse over time. Every charge and discharge, they hold less power.
It's not a one-time purchase either, right? I've heard replacements down the line are expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Most batteries need a full swap every 5 to 10 years, another big expense, often thousands of dollars. Plus, their performance really changes with temperature. They don't work well in extreme heat or cold, and they need regular maintenance to keep them going as long as possible.
So it's a big investment with recurring costs and practical limits. Sounds like solar alone, even with batteries, can be risky. What happens when things break? Because anything electrical or mechanical eventually needs fixing, right?
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do when parts like your charge controllers or inverters fail? Charge controllers, they're essential for managing the electricity flow from the panels to the batteries. They prevent overcharging and damage. If those fail, your whole solar power generation stops. Inverters, they change the DC electricity from the panels and batteries to AC, which powers most appliances.
Right.
If that goes down, you have no usable power. And the solar panels themselves, they need regular cleaning for efficiency, and all the electrical connections need checking. Finding a qualified technician who will come out to a remote off-grid location, that could be tough and expensive. You could be without power for a long time.
Okay, so solar as your only source has some big vulnerabilities. How about the other common option, relying a lot on fuel generators? Having enough fuel solves the reliability issue, right?
That's another tempting idea that often leads to problems. The thing with relying mainly on stockpiling fuel, the challenges are a few things, mainly safety and whether it'll actually work in the long run. Storing tons of flammable stuff like gasoline, diesel, or propane, it's not just about space, it's a serious safety risk.
Yeah.
Plus, fuel actually breaks down over time, loses its power.
Right.
So that emergency supply you built up might not work when you really need it.
And I'm guessing there might be rules about storing so much fuel, depending on where you live.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on your location, there could be legal limits on how much and what kind of fuel you can store.
Yeah.
But stepping back, thinking about off-grid independence, relying only on stored fuel just means you're dependent on the fuel supply chain instead of the utility company. In an emergency, exactly when you'd need that backup, deliveries could stop or prices could go through the roof, totally defeating the purpose of being self-reliant.
That's a really important point. You're swapping one kind of dependency for another with its own set of risks. And what about the generators themselves? They're not exactly known for being efficient.
No, they're not. Standard generators use fuel at a pretty constant rate. Doesn't matter how much power you're actually using.
Right.
Even if it's just a few lights, it could be burning way more fuel than needed, and they're usually pretty loud, which isn't great for the peace and quiet many people want off-grid. They need regular maintenance, and if it's your main power source, running all the time, it won't last as long. All that fuel and maintenance, it adds up, both in cost and environmental impact.
So both relying solely on solar and solely on fuel generators have some serious downsides. This brings us to the idea you mentioned, a more integrated approach. What does a well-rounded, resilient, off-grid power system actually look like?
The key is moving away from a single solution and creating a multi-source power system, a carefully balanced mix of different energy technologies that work together.
Right.
Each one makes up for the weaknesses of the others. It's building a resilient ecosystem of power.
Okay, so what are the basic parts of this balance system? What should someone be thinking about?
The foundation is renewable primary sources, mainly solar and wind. They need to be sized realistically based on understanding your actual energy needs and the climate where you live. It's about finding the sweet spot to meet your daily needs without overspending or underproducing. Next, you need smart battery storage. Modern lithium iron phosphate batteries, or LiFePO4, are a big step forward. They often cost more upfront than traditional lead-acid batteries, but they last way longer and handle deep discharging much better, which is common off-grid.
So, life before batteries, higher upfront cost, but the longer lifespan and better performance off-grid make them worth it for reliability in the long run.
Exactly.
What's the next crucial piece of this setup?
The next important part is a backup generator, but one with advanced features, not your basic run-of-the-mill generator. We're talking about models made for off-grid living, often able to run on different fuels like propane, natural gas, diesel, or even biodiesel. Ideally, it should have load sensing, meaning it only uses as much fuel as needed for the power demand, which really improves efficiency. It should automatically integrate with your renewable sources so it kicks in seamlessly when solar and batteries can't keep up. Things like remote monitoring through your smartphone, longer times between maintenance, and even heat recovery systems to capture waste heat for water or space heating, those add a lot of value and efficiency.
That's a much more sophisticated piece of equipment than the standard generator. Sounds much better integrated into an off-grid system. How do all these different parts communicate and work together efficiently?
That's where the microcontroller system integration comes in. Think of it as the brain that manages your whole off-grid power setup. It prioritizes using your renewables, manages how your batteries charge and discharge to make them last longer, starts and stops the backup generator when needed, does load shedding, which is smartly reducing power to non-essential stuff when energy is low.
Wow.
And it even gives you data on your energy use so you can see where to improve.
So it's not just about having a bunch of power sources, it's about having a smart system that makes them all work together for maximum efficiency and reliability.
Yeah.
That makes sense. For someone listening who's seriously considering this, what are some concrete steps they can take?
The very first and most important step is to start with a thorough energy audit.
Okay.
You need to carefully track exactly how much energy you use now and estimate what you'll need in the future.
Right.
Track your household energy use at different times of day and year, see which appliances use the most, think about any future expansions or changes in your energy needs. You can't design a good off-grid system without knowing exactly how much energy you use.
It sounds like basic groundwork. Know your energy demand before you even think about supply. What's the next practical step?
The next key is designing for redundancy in your critical systems. Think about having backups for essential things. If you mainly heat with electricity, consider a wood-burning stove as a reliable alternative. If you rely on an electric cooktop, maybe have a propane one as backup. For water, a manual pump alongside your electric one. Even for your fridge, look into non-electric cooling. You want to make sure that if one part of your system fails, you're not left without the essentials.
So it's about layers of backup, not being totally dependent on one thing for vital needs. What else should people focus on as they plan their off-grid move?
Prioritizing energy efficiency is absolutely essential. Every bit of energy you save means less you need to generate and store, which means big savings on equipment, maintenance, and fuel. Upgrade to energy-efficient appliances, improve your home's insulation, switch to LED lighting everywhere, use passive solar design if you can, and use smart home tech to minimize those phantom loads from electronics. People say that for every dollar you put into energy efficiency, you can save $3 on power generation and storage.
That's a strong argument for making efficiency a top priority. It helps the environment and makes a practical off-grid system more realistic and affordable. You also mentioned starting with a hybrid approach if possible. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, if where you live allows it, starting with a grid-tied system that has battery backup can be a smart move.
Right.
This way you learn how things work in real life before going completely off-grid. You can find any weaknesses or things to improve in your design while you still have the grid as a safety net. It also lets you spread out the cost and gain confidence with your setup.
Sounds much less overwhelming. A learning curve and a safety net at the same time. To show how valuable this multi-source approach is, do you have any examples of people who have successfully done this?
Sure, there's the Johnson family in Montana. They first tried going off-grid with only solar panels and batteries.
Okay.
They had frequent power outages, especially in those long, cloudy winters. After a couple of tough years, they redesigned their system using fewer solar panels, adding a small wind turbine to catch wind energy, and a sophisticated hybrid generator with propane backup.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, they haven't had a single outage in over 3 years, even though they live in a place with unpredictable weather.
That's a great example of how having multiple sources makes things much more reliable. Any other examples of this integrated approach?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Take the Mountain View homestead in Colorado. They have an even more diverse system. Solar panels, a micro-hydro setup powered by a nearby stream, and a multi-fuel generator, all managed by a smart system that prioritizes renewable sources based on what's available, automatically switches to battery power when needed, and uses the generator only as a last resort. It's a truly integrated and resilient solution, perfectly tailored to their environment and energy needs.
These real-world examples show the difference between looking for a single perfect solution and building a well-thought-out, adaptable system. So, as we wrap up, what's the most important message for anyone thinking about going off-grid?
The key takeaway is this. There's no magic bullet for off-grid energy. Real energy independence isn't about finding one technology that does everything. It's about a smart, multifaceted strategy that recognizes the limits of each energy source and combines them to create a reliable and resilient power supply.
So it's not about the one best piece of equipment, it's about building a team of energy sources that work together well.
Exactly. The most successful off-grid homes work like ecosystems, where solar, wind, smart batteries, and advanced generators all play a part, each one covering for the other's weaknesses. This might mean more planning and a bigger upfront investment, but in the long run, it leads to much greater reliability, resilience, and satisfaction with your off-grid life.
That makes perfect sense. It sounds like real energy independence is less about a single purchase and more about a comprehensive and adaptable plan.
Exactly. And even though we focused on those going completely off-grid today, the basic ideas we talked about, understanding your energy use, having backups for important systems, and prioritizing energy efficiency, these are super valuable even if you stay connected to the grid. Thinking about a more resilient and diverse approach to your energy can have big benefits regardless of whether you ever plan to disconnect completely.
That's a fantastic point. Whether you're dreaming of being completely off-grid or just want to make your current energy more reliable, understanding these things and using a multifaceted approach is key. Thanks so much for clarifying this important part of off-grid living. It's given me, and I'm sure our listeners, a lot to think about. Now I'm wondering, what about,
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's dive into that.
Okay, so,
So when we look at,
right,
well, there's this idea that,
I see.
and that's where,
Interesting.
yeah. And so the thing is,
Right, I get it.
that's why it's so important too.
Absolutely. Makes total sense. Okay, so moving on.
And this is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So what we're seeing now is,
Wow, that's incredible. So to wrap this up,
the bottom line is,
excellent point. And that's why, for anyone listening who's interested in this, they should really consider.
absolutely. That's the key takeaway here.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been a really insightful conversation. And for our listeners, be sure to check out our next episode where we'll be exploring.
Looking forward to it.
Until next time.
See you then.
Bye.